Have you ever wondered which event in American history left an indelible mark, sculpting the nation as we know it today? The American Civil War, a conflict that erupted over the question of slavery, is that transformative event. As we journey back to the mid-19th century, we find a nation divided by a moral and political chasm. The question of slavery, a contentious issue that had simmered beneath the surface for decades, was reaching a boiling point. The North, an industrial powerhouse, was steadily moving towards an ideology that saw slavery as a moral wrong. In stark contrast, the South, with its agrarian economy, viewed slavery as an integral part of their livelihood and way of life. This unresolved question of slavery started to shape the political landscape of the country. It was a ticking time bomb, waiting for a trigger. And that trigger came in the form of the presidential election of 1860. The election of Abraham Lincoln, a man openly opposed to the expansion of slavery, was viewed by many in the South as a direct threat to their way of life. In response, 7 Southern states chose to secede from the Union, a decision that was as unprecedented as it was controversial. Their secession led to the formation of a new political entity, the Confederacy. A separate nation, born out of a struggle to protect what they perceived as their rights and way of life. The North and the South, once united under one flag, found themselves on opposite sides of a political divide. The unresolved question of slavery had effectively torn the nation in two. The stage was set for a conflict that would shape the future of the nation. On April 12, 1861, the cannons roared, marking the beginning of a war that would last for 4 bloody years. The American Civil War, a conflict that would forever reshape the nation, had begun. From its earliest days, the war was a complex dance of strategies and counter-strategies, with both the Union and the Confederacy vying for control and victory. In the initial stages, both sides believed that a single decisive battle would end the conflict. The Union, under the leadership of President Abraham Lincoln, aimed to maintain the integrity of the United States and sought to quell the rebel forces of the Confederacy. The Confederacy, on the other hand, fought for the preservation of their way of life, which was deeply intertwined with the institution of slavery. The war was a chess match of military tactics. Major battles such as the Battle of Bull Run and the Battle of Antietam painted a grim picture of the war, with casualties mounting on both sides. The Confederacy, despite being outnumbered and out-resourced, held its own, largely due to the strategic genius of generals like Robert E. Lee. Yet, in the Western theater, the tide began to turn in favor of the Union. The Western theater, a term used to describe the area west of the Appalachian Mountains and east of the Mississippi River, became a crucial battleground. It was here that the Union achieved significant victories. Union forces, led by Ulysses S. Grant, seized control of key rivers and railroads, disrupting the Confederacy's supply lines and dividing their forces. The capture of Vicksburg, Mississippi in 1863 gave the Union control of the Mississippi River, effectively splitting the Confederacy in two. These victories in the Western theater marked a turning point in the war. They allowed the Union to apply a strategy known as the Anaconda Plan, a naval blockade aimed at suffocating the Southern economy. The Confederacy was increasingly isolated, and its resources were gradually depleted. Amidst the carnage, a glimmer of hope emerged, a proclamation that would change the course of history. As the war raged on, President Lincoln made a decisive move. In 1863, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, a document that declared all slaves in rebel territories to be forever free. It was a bold step towards a new era, one where the shadows of slavery would begin to recede. The war was far from over, but the lines were now clearly drawn. The fight was not just for the Union, but for the freedom and dignity of all its people. In 1863, amidst the turmoil of war, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, a decree that would forever alter the course of the conflict and the nation. This was a defining moment in the American Civil War, a pivotal shift that would steer the course of the conflict towards the Union. The Emancipation Proclamation was more than just a piece of legislation. It was a beacon of hope, a promise of freedom that rekindled the spirit of those fighting for the Union cause. This decree declared that all enslaved people in Confederate-held territory were to be set free. It didn't immediately end slavery, but it fundamentally transformed the character of the war. From that point onwards, the conflict was not just about preserving the Union, but also about abolishing the institution of slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation served a dual purpose. Domestically, it bolstered the morale of Union soldiers, providing them with a moral cause to fight for. Internationally, it made it politically unviable for countries like Britain and France to support a confederacy that was fighting to preserve slavery, effectively hindering the South's attempts to gain foreign aid. This turning point was not just about policy, but also about the shifting dynamics on the battlefield. The Union was making significant headway in the Western theater, capturing key territories and disrupting Confederate supply lines. The tide of the war had begun to turn, and with the Emancipation Proclamation, the Union had found renewed vigor and purpose. Yet this was not a sudden transition to victory. It was the start of a long, arduous path. The Confederacy was far from defeated, and the Union had to continue its struggle with renewed determination. But with the issue of slavery now at the forefront of the conflict, the Union had not only a strategic advantage, but also a moral high ground. The Emancipation Proclamation marked a significant shift in the narrative of the American Civil War. It was a turning point that moved the conflict beyond a mere territorial dispute, elevating it to a battle for human rights and dignity. The war was far from over, but the path to freedom had been paved. On April 9, 1865, the Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant, marking the end of the Confederacy and the American Civil War. This pivotal moment in American history signified a cessation of the bloodshed, the dissolution of the Confederate States, and a long-awaited sigh of relief for those yearning for peace. The surrender came as a result of the Union's significant gains, particularly in the Western theater, which had severely weakened the Confederacy's military and economic strength. The once formidable Southern Army, battered by relentless Union offensives, was now a shadow of its former self. General Lee's surrender at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia was a tacit admission of the Confederacy's defeat. Yet, the end of the war did not bring immediate tranquility. The conflict had exacted a devastating toll on the nation. Between 620,000 and 750,000 soldiers had lost their lives, making it the deadliest military conflict in American history. Mothers had lost sons, wives had lost husbands, children had lost fathers. The landscape of the South was scarred by the destruction of war, its economy in ruins. The immediate aftermath of the war was a time of great turmoil and change. The Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 had declared that all enslaved people in Confederate-held territory were to be set free. Now, with the war's end, the 13th Amendment was ratified in 1865, formally abolishing slavery throughout the United States. The nation was on the brink of a new era, one that would seek to heal the wounds of war and reconcile the deep-seated divisions between North and South. This period, known as the Reconstruction era, was a time of rebuilding, reformation, and for many, a time of hope. The war had ended, but the scars ran deep, and the task of rebuilding a nation loomed large. The American Civil War left an indelible mark on the fabric of the nation, a haunting reminder of a time when brother fought against brother, and the ideals of liberty and justice were put to the ultimate test. The Civil War, the deadliest conflict in American history, left a profound impact on the nation, shaping it as we know it today. The ripples of this historic event have permeated the fabric of society, influencing the trajectory of the United States in profound ways. One of the most significant outcomes of the Civil War was the abolition of slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 marked a turning point, declaring freedom for slaves in Confederate-held territory. But it was the ratification of the 13th Amendment in 1865 that formally abolished slavery throughout the nation. This monumental shift not only altered the lives of millions of African Americans, but also transformed the economic, political, and social landscape of the country. The Civil War also brought about the collapse of the Confederacy, a political entity that had asserted its right to secede from the Union. The defeat of the Confederacy reaffirmed the indivisible nature of the United States, setting a precedent against secession. It underscored the supremacy of the federal government, a principle that continues to guide the nation's governance. But the legacy of the Civil War extends beyond these monumental changes. The struggle for racial equality, sparked by the abolition of slavery, continues to this day. The civil rights movement of the mid-20th century, the ongoing fight against systemic racism, and the Black Lives Matter movement are all part of the long shadow cast by the Civil War. They bear testament to the enduring struggle for justice and equality that was ignited over a century and a half ago. The Civil War also shaped the national consciousness, instilling a sense of unity and shared history. It serves as a stark reminder of the costs of division and the value of unity. It has inspired countless works of literature, art, and film, becoming an integral part of the American cultural narrative. Today, we live in a nation shaped by the echoes of the Civil War. The battlefields have quieted, but the quest for equality and justice continues. The legacy of the Civil War is not confined to the pages of history books, but is alive in the ongoing struggle for a more perfect union. The echoes of the Civil War still reverberate in the heart of America, reminding us of our past as we strive to build a better future. The American Civil War, a pivotal point in our history, continues to shape our nation in profound ways. We've journeyed through the unresolved question of slavery, the unleashing of war, the turning point, the surrender and aftermath, and the lasting legacy. Each of these phases reflects the struggles and triumphs that have marked our nation's journey. Our understanding of this conflict and its repercussions helps us to better grasp the complexities of our current state. With the echoes of the past still resonating, we continue to navigate the course of our shared history. If you're enjoying our videos, please consider supporting us by liking and subscribing. It truly makes a difference for us. Thank you.